then Chief Emi Akinloye was a candidate supported by the, I'll explain all these things, with Mabolaje NCNC Alliance at Ibadan. Chiefs Aboderin Akibiyi and Laleyin were also late Alhaji Adegoke Adelabu, also of the Mabolaje NCNC Alliance, associated with the NCNC after the election. You know what? There are other names, but let me quickly read. He mentioned the Aboderin. I want to read what he had to say. Ombo, stay with me, please. I have to go to another book. But the journal is called, the particular one is called The Political Philosophy of Chief Obafemi Olowo by Olaiwola Abegunrin. So let's get into it. Now you know the name. The 1951 parliamentary elections was contested by two main political parties, the Action in the Western Nigeria. Although there were other local parties, mostly cultural organizations without affiliation to the AG or the NCNC, or Citizens Council, ICC, in Ibadan, Ondo Improvement League in Ondo, Otuedo in Benin, Nigeria People's Congress. The public relations officer of the Nigerian government, Mr. Harold Cooper, wrote to all political parties contesting the elections to make known names of their candidates for the final elections to the House of Assembly. In addition, Mr. Cooper told newsmen at a press conference that, this is what Mr. Cooper said, this would help his department to identify the party to which elected candidates belong when issuing press releases or broadcasting results for the of the final election on Monday, September 22nd. It is understood that letters have been dispatched to the secretariats of the NCNC, the Action Group, the Nigerian People's Congress, and also submit or publish the names of. They did not know who was for them or against them. Confused set of people. When was this? 1951, with its candidates. In Addis and the Nigerian Tribune, actually in most parts of the West. Somewhere. They also asked for manifesto. NCNC did not provide any manifesto. They said they were going to wait till after the election to tell the people what they're going to do for them. And they accused AG that this manifesto they are talking about too early. This was too early and was a way of getting people to vote for them. Why else would you put out manifesto? It's not to get people to vote for you. Somebody say LP. Yes, now it's similar to be like deja vu. Be like, let me put it this way, Nigeria history, what did they happen now, now deja vu? Sometimes is more current than tomorrow's newspaper. Than what happened. So they said list of candidates, everybody, AG provided the list, but that's not where I'm going. Where I'm going is respond to something I read in Azikiwe's book. That's why I even came to this book in the first place. So let me do what I think is the response from the people he was talking about. You mentioned Aboderin. That's the reason we went to that book. So let me read to you what Azikiwe said. So he said that some of the legislators who disappointed the hopes of the NCNC are as follows. The candidates supported by the Mabolaje NCNC Alliance at Leyin were also supported by the Mabolaje NCNC Alliance at Ibadan. Only the late Alhaji Adegoke Adelabu, that's Michael MS, only the Alhaji Adegoke Adelabu, also of the Mabolaje NCNC Alliance, associated with the NCNC. All you'll be seeing is that they were supported by NCNC. You will not see the thing that they were the candidate of the NCNC. But let's go to what the person that he mentioned said. Again, this is how we understand history. So it becomes easy. So, back to the book by Olaiwola Abegunrin, The Political Philosophy of Chief Obafemi Olowo. It says, Chief S. Olanleyin, Chief S. Akiyemi, and Alhaji Adegoke Adelabu, the people he mentioned, they all contested on Ibadan People's Party, not NCNC. Egbe Omo Ibile platform and won. They were independent of both the AG and the NCNC. In other words, It wasn't like NCNC people won, AG now took them away. They did not belong to either group. They were not even AG members. Only Alhaji Adelabu went with the NCNC, the Ibadan People's Party, urging them to join his party, the NCNC. Dr. Azikiwe's strategy was, however, faulty, since he relied mostly on Adelabu and Akinloye and thought that by getting the two of them, he would be able to switch the other members to his camp. I favored the action group, and I succeeded in getting all the members with the exception of Adelabu to the action group. The popular idea that the IPP cross-carpeted from the NCNC to the action group is therefore erroneous. Who is speaking here? Chief Abodering, Chief Moyo Abodering, who Azikiwe was talking about that we supported them. They were not members of the group, and it didn't. So again, apologies, we said people in Nigeria, when they use words, you have to ask for the definition of terms. Supporting Toba Soyi, the question you should be asking is this: how popular was NCNC in Ibadan? And did the people that, when you said Mobolaje NCNC alliance, did they win because of NCNC, and how did you even support them? They won under Ibadan People's Party. So parties began to IPP, Ibadan people like Chief Abodering, Chief Lanleyin, Adekunle Adelabu, and the rest of them, or with Odutola from Ijebu, or with folks from Ekiti and Ilesha. They were now wooing all of them, come and join our party, because you have, again, this was parliamentary system, not like what we have right now. Another party. And neither Ekiti division and SO Asan Ekpe division, making AG 41 seats. In Ijebu Day, and after the election declared for the AG, Chief Adeola Duzola's declaration for the action group was announced by Chief Bode Thomas in the Daily Times of November 1, 1951. In addition, the three Otu Edo members, including SO Igodaro, Benin Province, won on the platform. The Western Regional Elections victory of 44 seats out of 75 seats in the Western Nigeria House of Assembly. Only in Lagos, by the way, Lagos is not Lagos State too. This Lagos is not Lagos State. It's Lagos town. There's a town called Lagos. So now this is 1951. There was no Lagos State until 1967. There were 5 seats in Lagos. Again, those 5 seats were going to be representing Lagos in Ibadan. And Action Group did not win any of those seats. They were all won by NCNC. And one of those seats was. So every time they tell you that we didn't allow Zik to win, ask them the question. The one that he won that made him think of becoming. Did he import Igbos from Enugu to voted for him? That's why all this you are. So there was an election in September. There's another one in November. At the end of the day, AG had 44 of the 75, and Lagos had, and of those, and NCNC had the rest. But NCNC had how many? I think 22 or so. Was that? No, let me just read a bit more. Let's just again. Only in Lagos were the 5 seats won by the NCNC, led by Nnamdi Azikiwe, and there were internal squabbles and indiscipline within the party, which led to all the 5 NCNC legislators contesting among themselves for the 2 seats allocated to Lagos in the House of Representatives. What does this mean? You see, back then, again, it was Lagos. Even the Lagos town saw a gun that was, it wasn't FCT, there was no it wasn't capital territory until 54. So in 51, it was part of Western region. Okay? The people that came into the Western Regional House of Assembly came from all over Western region, right? Now, of the 5 that got in from Lagos, 2 of them will represent the same place in the House of Representatives, according to the Manifesto Constitution at the time. So you have 5, those 5 are in Western Region House of Assembly, but 2 of them will represent Lagos. So it's like, think of House of Assembly and House of Reps. And think about it this way. Let's assume that you have 5. So think of 5 House of Assembly. Say there are 5 constituencies, right? Now, from the state perspective, it's 5 constituencies. So each of the House of Assembly, right? Then those 5 House of Assembly constituencies are now divided again into 2 constituencies for House of Representatives. All right? So that means basically that of those 5, 2 of them will then go to the House of Reps to represent Lagos again. Seats in Lagos. Your party won all 5. Now, your party needs 2 people to represent the same Lagos in the House of Reps. And pick the 2 that be representing Lagos. Who has written about Zik? It wasn't a good leader. Again, no, even Easterners said it, but let's leave that part. The point I'm trying to make is this. Each of the 5, the party could not even say, 2 of you go there and represent Lagos. Every single one of them wanted to go there. Which was also a sign, I mean, it's a way to also understand the fact that the leadership. Let me just continue. The election result was a disappointment to the NCNC, whose leader, Nnamdi Azikiwe, had anticipated a majority in the regional and central federal legislature prior to the election. Azikiwe declared that he would not accept a ministerial post in an inferior legislature of the colonial type. This loss crippled the plan of the NCNC leader to paralyze the machinery of government, which will lead to the reformulation of a new constitution for Nigeria. Obviously, I'll explain. Obviously, the election outcome gave a majority to the action group, meaning that the NCNC could not form the Western Regional Government as Nnamdi Azikiwe had hoped. However, the result in Lagos gave the NCNC some hope. Because under the Constitution, under the Manifesto Constitution, a stipulated number of representatives from each administrative division was to be elected to the Federal House of Representatives from the Western House of Assembly. When the Western Nigeria House of Assembly met for the first time in January 7, 1952, 49 members instead of 44 declared for Action Group. Thus, apparently, the Action Group laid G49 and NCNC 26. NCNC representatives from Lagos to the House of Representatives. The Action Group majority in the House, a Yoruba, and Prince Adeleke Adedoyin, a Yoruba, who later joined the AG in favor of their leader, Dr. Azikiwe, NCNC, and Igbo. I'll quickly explain. I already said earlier that of the 5, 2 could go. Now, so Zik had only one role he could play in the Western Region Parliament, minority leader. Accept a ministerial post in an inferior legislature of the colonial type. In other words, if he was not going to be the head of the Western Region government, he would not accept a ministerial post in the Western Region Parliament. So, which means that the other thing he wanted was to be able to go to Lagos, having been nominated by the Western Region Parliament to represent Lagos in the House of Representatives. Now, if you were a leader and you are the organ of the party, what's so difficult in you being able to have a conversation amongst yourself, 5, and say, listen, you are 5, this person should represent this person, this person. Anyway, the Action Group had to vote, and and what's the other person's name? That is, he was saying in a book that maybe they should have let him go to the federal house. What you're saying basically is that, number one, I'm in this region. Listen, I'm a woman representing Lagos in Ibadan. But if you're not going to make me the head of this parliament, I don't want a Sarah post here. You're not going to have anything at all, even as of reps. In other words, you'll be in here, but you'll be a member like every other member. Mo like Baje. Baje. Odun. Azikiwe and most of the Igbo believe that Chief Awolowo used ethnic persuasion to win over Dr. Laurent Nimbe and Prince Adedoyin. By the way, this man went to Prince Adedoyin's father, Zik, and told him that he should persuade his son to step down for him. Zik told the king that the king should call his son, Adeleke Adedoyin, that Prince Adedoyin should step down for. Why should I tell him to leave it if it's good? Why should I tell my son to jettison it? Why should I tell him to abandon it for you? That pain is what they are still carrying today. One is it. Is Azikiwe was not allowed to lead everybody because he's the Lord and Messiah, and you know the song they were singing for him in Abba is the Lord and Messiah of everybody. Is the king of his people. Henceforth, Nnamdi Azikiwe, majority of the Igbo, never trusted Chief Awolowo and Yoruba, as NCNC was pigeonholed as an unofficial leader of opposition in the Western House of Assembly. Dr. Azikiwe, listen to this ridiculous statement. Dr. Azikiwe defended his abysmally poor performance at the polls, that he and his party were under the impression, as we read earlier, that they had won 43 out of the 80 seats in the Western House of Assembly, but 20 of the legislators whom they regarded as their members, supporters, or sympathizers aligned themselves with the action group. Victimhood. It's a victim. You heard the names of the people we read. You heard the parties they contested on, right? They were not in NCNC. They were not sympathizing with NCNC. NCNC just was under the impression. So the rest of Nigeria, this is, what we're in 2025. Wait, oh, this is 74 years, right? Right? Right. So for 74 years, what we have been arguing against in Nigeria is the impression of a man and his cohorts. Well, did people decamp later? Of course they did. Was it at the time they said it happened? No, it didn't happen at that time. That cross-carpeting that way shouting, those people did not belong to NCNC. They were independent candidates. They were the bride that everybody wanted to have. They were trying to get this, you know, I mean, the girl, everybody wanted to become their bride. So you woo the girl, she said no, you're now crying like a bitch. I had to use that word. But sincerely, people are still crying like bitches in 2025. Imagine you go to a girl, you ask her out, and she says no. You're now crying and saying that, listen, I was under the impression that that girl liked me, but that one has married her. Now, what's happened with that, though? If they see, they don't call you a man, they call you a bitch. You see fine girl, you talk to the girl, fair one now, fair me. If the guy says no, the fish inside the ocean, there are plenty. You look for another one, or you re-strategize. But no, they say people are tribalists. We've dealt with that one. Let's go back to the primary source. I'm talking like this because somebody sent me a video yesterday. And that video was saying, Awo is a bigot, Awo is a tribalist, they didn't allow Zik. I'm like, why do you people use the word they didn't allow? Allow as how? Like, let me speak like this guy that used to say, as how? Is that how he says it? That's how he says it. As how now? As how? Like, based on what should you be allowed to become the leader of people in Yoruba land? Or Western region? And let me also quickly say this because I think it's also a mistake we make. Yeah. There were no premiers in 51 or 52. There were no premiers. We didn't have premier until 1954. What you could become was you could become a minister, and then you could also become the leader of government business. That's what you could become. And that's what Awo did. And that's what your Ita became in Enugu. But when Zik could not take being the minority leader, again, I'll repeat it 1,000 times if I have to. Zik was in Ibadan representing Lagos. He won that election. When he couldn't take being minority leader, he then moved back to the Eastern region and orchestrated a plan that ousted Eyo Ita, who was from present-day Cross River State, and finally turned the entire thing to an Igbo thing. And it was that same Eyo Ita, we're going to get to that later on, who then got him reported, which led to the answer from House of Lords 1956 and the First Assault Tribunal, where they found him guilty of stealing £877,000 from the Eastern Region Marketing Board. Let's go back to the other book now. Hope you're having a great time.
Former Governor Tambuwa, Senator Tambuwa.
Again, I'll repeat it 1,000 times if I have to. Zik was in Ibadan representing Lagos. He won that election. When he couldn't take being minority leader, he then moved back to the Eastern region and orchestrated a plan that ousted Eyo Ita, who was from present-day Cross River State, and finally turned the entire thing to an Igbo thing. And it was that same Eyo Ita, we're going to get to that later on, who then got him reported, which led to the answer from House of Lords 1956 and the First Assault Tribunal, where they found him guilty of stealing £877,000 from the Eastern Region Marketing Board. Let's go back to the other book now. Hope you're having a great time. By the way, let me say something. I want to read something. Whatever you see happen in 51 cannot be disconnected from what happened in 1941, 1940, 1938. In other words, what you see, so if, again, history, you cannot discuss history in a vacuum, like without context. I say, oh, they are tribalists. You have to remember that this person who is trying to become the Oga in Western region in 1951 was the same person who in 1941 destroyed NYM by saying that people are not going to vote for Oba Kisoya because he was Ijebu, thereby destroying the movement by pulling out Igbo people and Ijebu in 1941, 10 years prior. It was the same person who, between 1938 and 1941, talked to everybody about the greatness of Igbo above every other person in Nigeria, including football match with secondary school students. It was the same person that Odutola, who then decided to become a member of Action Group in 1951, NS Sekoli, Obasamala Kisoya, H.O. Davis, and Zik. In elections in 1938. So between 37 and 38, Zik was doing well, right? Using his skills to help the party, NYM win. It was a nationalist organization. It was dominated by Yoruba people, but it was not a Yoruba organization, just like NNDP and NCNC in the beginning, or in the Beninge. Anyway, 38, Zik switched, says championing Igbo. 40, they were going to remove him, and then they were okay, you know what? Because there's going to be election in 41, they left him. Big mistake. 41, he scattered the party by saying that, oh, they don't want Azikiwe to run because he's Ijebu. Even though our who supported Ikoli was also Ijebu, and Ikoli was Ijo. But Zik created that thing. Why did Zik switch? Any ideas? That's a long question, no, but it's a relevant question, so let me answer. Yes, I can tell you why he switched. There are many reasons, but let's start with this one. Before Zik returned to Nigeria in 1937, the Nigerian youth movement had a newspaper. It was called The Service. They used that paper to talk about their activities, their plans, their programs, and things like that. Zik started West African Pilot in 1937. It became the most popular newspaper in Lagos, in Nigeria. Ogbeni Busui, please get a YouTube page to enable us have details of this at all time. I'm literally streaming on YouTube right now. We're on YouTube, we're on Facebook. If you want, you can go to the live section on YouTube, Busui Oris, and you find the videos. So your prayer has been answered. Thank you, sir. I have to get back my thoughts. Zik started publishing West African Pilot. It became very successful, right? It became so successful that people would leave their civil service jobs to work in West African Pilot. He had the people, right? He spoke the language of the young people, of the youth, of the nationalists, and people celebrated him. And because of the popularity of his paper, the Nigerian youth movement decided to stop publishing service. Big mistake. Big mistake. They were like, you know what? We're going to use West African Pilot. I mean, you're popular. I mean, this, by the way, Zik was already a member of the executive committee. So they were like, no, let's just leave this service for a while. Pilot is popular. People are reading it. Let's use Pilot. So they used Pilot. After a while, they had a rethink. Apparently, Pilot is a commercial venture. There'll be things that they will NYM people may not like, e.g. Zik started writing against the people. So, for instance, he had issues with a man called Mr. Bates, who was the editor of Nigerian Daily Times. And that became an issue, and then H.O. Davis visited Bates, to have a conversation. Bates talked about the fact that H.O. Davis visited him. H.O. Davis was a member of NYM, but Zik went against him. Zik began to have certain things where, because he was already pushing this Igbo agenda, anything that didn't give him that, to be honest, ethnic supremacy or superiority, he worked against it. E.g., when Adetokunbo Ademola was going to be made the magistrate, right, the first magistrate in Nigeria, because at the time, NYM was fighting for Africanization of the civil service. And the British was going to acquiesce and just give us one. Zik worked against him. And he said it was because he did not have the statutory post-call experience. How would he get it if he was not put there? Thank God they put him there. Zik still wrote against it. But the real crux of it is that when they switched to service, Zik switched. Because not only would they be pulling out whatever money they were paying, if they were paying anything for those, adverts and stuff in his papers, they would also become a competition for him. It was a business deal. Zik destroying the entire movement. Two things. Number one, business, in the sense that he was losing money. Secondly, he said this himself, by the way, in October of 1940, that certain individuals within the party had wronged him. So that was an ego trip. So based on that, he was writing against the party, against NYM, against whatever they were doing, was writing against it. So that tells you there are two things. Number one, money, and number two, ego. You are wrong. You are wrong. And let me say something. Nigerians, we've got to do better. If a person does something wrong, stop making a baby out of them by saying it was the British that used them. If the British used anybody, it was the North. Say they use Zeke. They only use Zeke to be able to get the North, the power they wanted the North to have, not to destroy anything in Nigeria. No, stop making Zeke look like he didn't know what he was doing. The British used him. Used him, Bawo. We're talking about what goes all the way. Maybe today we're even going to get to it again. We have to be careful not to infantilize people. Anyway, I hope I answered the question. Part of that meeting, the meeting held in October of 1940, he said that, which is actually number one in my opinion, is that money issue. It just went crazy. With those few points of mine, let us go back to the book. You said he knew what he was doing, but you believe he was a tool. He was not a traitor to Nigeria. See, what you are saying is actually going to excuse him. Did the Oyibo tell him to say what he did in 1954? Who came up with the idea that they you know what? I have, you see here, I'm not going to read it because of time. 1975, Zeke granted an interview, and in that interview, he was boasting about how he ensured that secession clause was not included in the Constitution in 1954. That's 21 years. My question to you, they are saying British. Did the British tell him to say that in 1954? A person does something in Kotoba. Let me tell you, British is not your Nigeria's problem. I know people don't like to hear things like that. Britain is not Nigeria's problem. And I'm not saying they don't constitute a problem. They have their own wala. But I'm saying they are not the reason we are where we are. All this thing of imperialism, Britain, China cannot colonize it. So it wasn't a tool. The only time, in my opinion, and I may be wrong, you may correct me if you have other, again, so another thing is this, I don't like abstract statements. Like you must be able to back it up with, oh, shall I buy, oh, shall I buy, oh, shall I buy. We have to be able to, so it's important that we don't just say things like, it must be a tool. Based on what? The only time that I have to say, okay, I can tell that this happened and it may have been a tool on this particular matter was in 1959. And it was not a tool to destabilize Nigeria. It was a tool to get the North in power. The North needed they needed either the West or the East. And according to Howard Smith, who was a colonial officer, and I think I played this, couldn't work with Awo because according to them, the British government, Awo was too idealistic. By the way, almost every book you read about him, including the one that we're reading right now, talks about Awo just being they could not work with Awo because as far as they were concerned, Awo was too straight. And it's clear. I read here last week, 1959 elections, that same elections, see what Awo did in the North. How do you think the North will work with him? Or how do you think he would want to work with the North? Based on what happened to his people in the North. And by his people, I'm not talking about Yoruba people, I'm talking about action group representatives in the North. I don't know if you read it. Let me recommend the book. We're going back to the original book, a bit to the main text. Just give me a second. I can't find the book. Must be somewhere inside. The title of the book is Adventures in Power Book 2. Adventures in Power Book 2, Travails of Democracy and the Rule of Law by Awolowo. You see what even Awo himself wrote that happened in the North. Where it was wrong, you can tell. What got the people in the North angry? Not the people, the establishment in the North angry. So the British knew that this guy about it much later, but Awo did not like the feudal system of the North. Awo wanted freedom for the Hausa. That is a taboo, is even blasphemy in the North, because the ruling class was and is, for the most part, Fulani. If you break that social order, the people that will lose are the establishment figures or establishment people, right? Establishment people. So if you break the feudal structure of the society, the class that will lose will be the aristocracy, which is dominated by the Fulani. You want freedom for the Hausa. However, the North that we're talking, we say North, but the North at the time was primarily Fulani. And I'm not saying that they were primarily Fulani in terms of now only Fulani they deal. I'm saying that in terms of the people who hold the levels of power. So to get Awo to work with in that kind of arrangement will not work. So what did they do? They got Zik to do it, and that's the only time I can say, okay, yes, they blackmailed him. But they couldn't have blackmailed him if he didn't steal money either. But again, I'm not saying you are wrong, but please, if you want to make this statement and you want me to really take it seriously, please provide evidence. I've given you one where the Oyinbo used Zik, and they used him because they felt they needed somebody that would help the North win. And if anybody betrayed anybody in that place, it was not the Oyinbo, it was Zik betraying the Yoruba people. It was Zik betraying Awo. It was NCNC betraying AG. Because they had an agreement. I wonder Ajambe Kunse Tiba Lomba Papa is a arrangement. Then an agreement. They were going to form the government. Because AG was going to get some seats in the North with those we had in the West. I keep saying we like I was there, but you read this into a point, people I say you did here. With what we had in the West, and then the NCNC also had the East. If we work together, we could form government and then displace the North. By the time they woke up, Azikiwe don't go join North, but now Yoruba people be tribalist. So you're a Fulani slave. There has never been 59. Zik was answerable to the Fulani. 79. Equipment was answerable to so. But yeah, thank you for your contribution. But I hope I wasn't too harsh. I was just trying to make sure that we don't, take the wrong narrative. But I appreciate your presence and I thank you for typing. But say if we tell people when they talk to us, say we the evidence. If we talk too, we must have evidence. Thank you for understanding. So let's go back to the book, The Educated Elite in Nigerian Society by Ibe Adele. By the way, I didn't finish what I was saying. Oh God, I didn't finish what I was saying. I was saying that the person who in 1951 wanted to become the leader of government business in Western region had in 2 years prior said God has specially created his own Igbo nation. Guys, let's pause for a second and think about it. 48, you were against your people having the action group, having Egbe Motudua in 1948. You incited violence against the Yoruba people in 1948. Then in 1949, you went to Aba and you said God, the God of Africa, has specially created the Igbo race, Igbo nation, to lead the children of Africa out of the bondage of the ages. In other words, you are a superior race. To create a parallel organization for Yoruba people in Yoruba land. You now came in 51 and want to become the head of Yoruba people in Yoruba land. Could it work now? Could it work? 1951 again did not happen in a vacuum. There's a 17-year relationship between Zik and Awo, or at least knowledge of each other. And they had a head-on after 6 years of meeting each other in 1940, where Awo insisted that he must be expelled from NYM. And I'll tell you this, I support Awo 100%. Zik was constituting nuisance in the party, just moving anyhow. But they didn't expel him. And it's not his fault. He threatened to resign. They now say, I don't resign, don't resign. And the reason was because they wanted to use this newspaper in 1941. Again, and to buy fair J, my master no. And to have J, if don't go after all this Ifa. The NYM wanted Ifa. They dealt with Zik because that same year, 1940, they were going to fill a seat in the parliament after Lakija passed on. And Zik wanted to go. God bless you. Thank you for helping me with that away. Ifan Fanilakboya, thank you. Ifan Fanilakboya. They were going to run for office they had a by-election because Lakija died. Zik also wanted to represent Lagos. 1941. Zik came last in the primaries. And then he said he will not be running again. He just become a godfather. How did that to Zik? So, Olayinka Lakija had passed on. The seat was now vacant. So they're going to have by-election. But before they had the by-election, they decided to have in-house election. And many people vied for it. Jubril Martins, NSC Coley, Zik himself, many of them. But Zik, by the time they don't party in-house elections, Zik got the least votes. So maybe that even was part of why he just got angry. By February of 41, about 4 months later, he just said he just resigned and started writing nonsense against NYM until that party broke. Until that party broke. And the way he did it was he ensured that the Igbos pulled out of NYM and the Ijebus also pulled out of the NYM. And they did that because he said they didn't want Ijebu man to become a legislative member. Thankfully, that Ijebu man eventually later aligned with AG, but he became king. And that's why we call him Oba Samla Kesonya, the Odemo of Ishara. Let's go back to the book.
In the leadership.
I see. That is power based. In a meeting, actually was trying to respond to somebody earlier. So the person had asked a question. The only mystery I don't understand about Zik was to concede prime minister and choose to be president. So I was saying that 1 second. I was saying that rather than just go ahead to respond, which I would have loved to do, I think it's better to question. And then after that video, if I have to say anything, or if I need to say anything else, I will then add, to the answer provided in this particular video. So this is also one video on our YouTube channel, Busui Oris on YouTube. It's titled Awolowo, Azikiwe, and Why He Partnered with the North, the hidden story of 1959. It was uploaded less than an hour ago, but I think it's going to give you the answer you need. But if I need to say any other thing afterwards, I will. But you're going to like this one, so please take a listen. But please power tap while you listen. On YouTube on 9.5k, which is good, but it can be better on YouTube. Sorry, on TikTok on 9.5k likes. Please let's power tap a bit more. If you're on YouTube, please like the live. We have more people than likes on YouTube, so please like the live so that way the algorithm can recommend it to other people. Okay, so I'd like you to take a listen to this one. Awolowo, Azikiwe, and why he partnered with the North, the hidden story of 1959. All right, enjoy. Could reap the benefits of charity beginning at home. He read the writing on the wall that Yoruba land could not be his thwarted Anago land in the eastern region, where he could reap the benefit of charity beginning at home. In a meteor-like fashion, he descended on the eastern region. That his power base was Igbo land in the eastern region. Sorry, we're having a little issue with the beginning. Just give me a second, please. Okay, I think it's perfect now. Let's go. In 1951, to transfer his political ambition to the western region, he read the writing on the wall that Yoruba land could not be land in the eastern region, where he could reap the benefit of charity beginning at home. In a meteor-like fashion, he descended on the eastern region, easily dislodged the non-Igbo leadership of the regional government, and rapidly succeeded in installing himself as the undisputed head of the region. This is a lesson for you, what I'm about to read right now. Thus, in the 50s, whilst Awolowo was being a quixotic idealist, injuring the most precious feelings of the Fulani Hausa leadership, Azikiwe was far more restrained and anxious to cooperate with the Fulani Hausa leadership. There was no question of him being petulantly arrogant like his Yoruba rival, who reportedly boasted once that he would never serve under a Northerner. It is true that Awo, in these 1959 elections, did not care for anything about what will please the Northern establishment. Awo didn't care. We talked about it earlier. Use helicopter, use choppers, had the plane in the air, writing stuff in the skies. They complained that the privacy of their wives were being invaded. The Bashiga, Awo sent his people to penetrate the northern region. By the way, when I said his people, I'm not talking about Yoruba people. They were Northerners. They were Northerners. Some of them from the Middle Belt, some of them from their house. Some of them were even outside themselves, who wanted the liberty or the independence of their own people, right? But they were dealt with by the Northern establishment. Awo was being idealistic. And I've said it before, I think as Yoruba people, it's a lesson, right? It's a lesson. And like I said last week, when you read Awo's first book, Papa wrote in Path to Nigerian Freedom, published in 1947, he talked about the fact that, you couldn't govern Nigeria as one entity. And then he said, as long as people were made to feel that they were Nigerian first, they will feel the need to poke nose in the affairs of other regions. And whilst I want greatness for all parts of Nigeria, if a group wants something different, if you want to change it, you may have to work based on the culture of that place, even though you don't like it. And that was something that Papa didn't care for. And let me say something before we go on. If Papa had not acted the way he did, then he would not be Awo. In order to be Awo, he did what he was supposed to do, which was not work with the Northern establishment. Come on. Or let me put it this way. He did what he was supposed to do, which was to look for a way to get the average Hausa person to, quote-unquote, gain freedom. If Awo did not think of the plight of the Hausa, then he would not be Awo. He would just be any other politician who wanted power. And when we get to Awolowo versus Akintola, I'm going to get into some of these things. That was one of the major differences between Awo and Akintola. Awo didn't want power for power's sake. I was thinking about the people in the North, not to work with the establishment. Agatha was like, and Agatha was being realistic. So I'm not saying Agatha was wrong. He was like, listen, if we're going to play this game, let's work with the North so that we can also get some of these largest, just like the NCNC got between 59, from 59 until around 61, 62. When Agatha said, let's change this thing. And they didn't change it in time. NCNC got that thing for the people of the North makes sense to me. And I think everybody must have that passion. However, we cannot repeat his method. Because if we repeat it, that means that we have learned nothing. And that's why I tell people, this is not like where we're shouting. There's a way around it. And the people that want to really do something, they're the ones who work with the establishment in the North. You like it too, you don't like it too, nobody cares. That's their own culture. And like I said, since I don't want anybody to come into Yoruba land with their weird culture, by the way, Yoruba culture is great. Some people have crazy culture, they still want to impose it on you. I don't want it. Therefore, I don't want it there either. I don't want, we don't have to take our own there either. So that's a lesson from Awo. So when he says Awo was being a quixotic idealist, as a Yoruba person who loves Awo, you will say, no, it's a lie. It's true. It's true. Awo was being an idealist. Zeke did not take that route. Zeke did not go in the face of the Northern establishment. However, contrary to what this writer wrote, that was not how Zeke became the head or the governor general. That's not how. What he is saying here is that because he was a tactician and he was a strategist, he was able to work with the North. That's not what happened. He was literally forced to work with the North. And that's why I said, history generally is important to read more than one book. If you read this one, you might take that narrative, but there's another narrative. I'm going to read something to you from this book called A Fatherless People by Ogun. So how did Zeke get power with the North? So again, I'm trying to correct a notion from this book. This book is saying that there was no question of Zeke being petulantly arrogant like his Yoruba rival, who reportedly boasted. By the way, yes, Awo said he couldn't work under the North, and I understand it. So again, there's something about Awo. I apologize when I talk about him. I want to explain something. There's something about him that once you begin to study him, you will understand. It was, how what gives you advantage could also be a disadvantage. That's it. Was very principled. It was very disciplined. Read his description, how this man described him. Bolage. I read it here before. The book is called People, Politics and Politicians in Nigeria. It was published by Bolage. He described Awo. And I think he was right. Because the way he even writes his book, you can tell. Very methodical, very disciplined. It's a plus, but it could also be a minus, And that's why we learn from, his mistakes. But it was very principled. But let me read this first. So how did Zeke get to work with the North? Very quickly, again, from A Fatherless People by Ogun. It says, party funding is always an issue with any electoral system. The Foster Sutton report published on 16th January 1957 confirmed what the colonial government already knew, which was that Azikiwe had been using customer deposits of his African Continental Bank to prop up the failing enterprises through which he had been funding the NCNC's activities. What does that mean? We'll come back to this book. I want to show you something. We'll come back to this one. I want to show you something from the House of Lords. So there was a sitting in 1956. What happened? What led to the Foster Sutton Tribunal? So this is from the Answered, House of Lords, 24th July 1956. Let me read what Lord Lloyd said. My lords, yesterday, in response to a question by the noble Lord, Lord Ogmore, I promised him that I would make a statement this afternoon. With your lordship's permission, I should like to make that statement, which is similar to one being made by my right honorable friend in another place at this moment. The statement is as follows. Please pay attention. A dispute has arisen in the eastern region of Nigeria about the relationship between the Premier, Dr. Azikiwe, and the African Continental Bank Limited. This bank was founded by Dr. Azikiwe. On assuming office, the Premier informed the governor that he had resigned his directorship of the bank. He and his enterprises with which he has been associated are still shown as large shareholders in it. My right honorable friend has been informed that during 1955, £877,000 of public money was invested in the bank and other large sums deposited with it out of funds made available from Marketing Board reserves to the Finance Corporation, which the Eastern Region government had established. My right honorable friend has also been informed that following this investment, the bank was a party to certain documents contemplating that the Premier should be life chairman of the bank and purporting to give him the right to nominate certain other directors. What's all this? I mean, but I have to, because of time. By the way, we've done this before. We have a video on YouTube. Go to pursue your risk, look out for Azikiwe and £877,000, something like that. Just if you use that as your search, as your keywords, you will find it. What did he say? What is he trying to tell us here? See, in 1955. By the way, before 55, Zik had established his own bank, African Continental Bank. And as Zik became Premier, of course, in order to avoid conflict of interest, was supposed to resign. He claimed to have made of the public deposits in the ACB was to finance Zik's various business ventures. I'll explain. In 1955, the Eastern Region Finance Corporation invested large sums of money in the ACB, money which had come from the Eastern Region Marketing Board. In turn, Zik financed his party, the NCNC. In 1955, the ACB and Zik's businesses were virtually bankrupt. In 1959, they developed the ACB. What is he saying here? You see, Zik was the Premier of the region. But Zik was also the owner of a bank. Now, back in the day, the regions had corporations, businesses. You know, back in the day, there wasn't anything called federal allocation. You had to make your own money. So whether it was cotton or groundnut or cocoa or palm oil, whatever it is, or rubber, you've got to do something. So people, you know, you had taxes and then you had exports. But for the marketing board, basically it's exports. So let's say, for instance, by the way, I've explained this before. Please, if you were here when I explained what happens with marketing board, please say yes. If not, please say no. I have a few minutes, so please help me. Just let me know. I want to make sure that we understand this so we're not just talking. So if you were here when we explained it, please say yes. If you were not here, please say no. Okay, I'm just going to be very quick. The way it worked, right, was that, let me use Western region. So I've said this thing before, but it's been a while. So let's say, for instance, there's cocoa. Western region would buy. Western region would go to the international market and talk to them about, oh, we have cocoa, want to sell it for, let's say, I like the figure I was using then. Let me see if I can remember. I think it was £12. Let's say 12. So they'll say £12. We're going to sell the bag of cocoa for £12. Sorry, guys. you think we are here to talk about? We are talking real stuff. You think this is not TikTok bars, bros. Go and meet your mates. Or you know what? I was going to meet you permanently, but I'm just going to send you to the naughty corner because you're disturbing. So let me just send you to the naughty corner. Where was I? Let's use Western region. There's cocoa. That's the major source of income. So the government would talk to merchant houses or mercantile houses or international company, and so forth, and say we're going to be selling cocoa to you £12 per bag. As just an example, £12 per bag. Come rain, come shine. Sorry, no. Let's say this. We're going to sell it to you at £20. £20 per bag. The Igbo says no. I can't do more than £15. Then somewhere we meet in the middle. It's about £18. So now it's £18. No matter what happens, let's use Switzerland for example. Switzerland gets the bag of cocoa from Yoruba land, from Western region for £18. Now, before this, right, the farmers, so there were two groups. There were the farmers and the produce buyers. The third group would be the multinational organization of the mercantile houses. Produce buyers used to buy from the farmers and sell to the mercantile houses. So the farmer sells, let's say the farmer makes a bag of kidney and they usually buy from him for, let's say, £8. £8. The middleman, the produce buyer, will buy it £8 and then sell it to the other guy, maybe at £10 or £12, and that one sells it to Switzerland at, I don't know, whatever pounds. Now, the government comes in and says, all you farmers, this is what we're going to do. Whenever you get your cocoa, just bring it to us. You're going to get £12. Now, remember, they used to pay, let's say they used to pay them £10. The produce buyer used to buy it at £10. We'll sell it to the mercantile houses at maybe 12 or 13 or 14 pounds, and then those ones will now sell it. So now you're telling the farmers, guys, every time you do this thing, just bring it to, again, this is a crude example, by the way. Just bring it to the government. We're going to buy it from you for £12. What that means basically is that